Baseball is back.
Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send them all the way around. Corbin Carroll with an inside the park answer back.
I'm Ivan Melendez.
I'm Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Tori Lavello, and you're listening to the T-Backs Podcast.
T-Backs Podcast.
T-Backs Podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the T-Backs Podcast, Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. And after a short hiatus, we are back, and we're coming to you this weekend because there's something very special happening this Wednesday. And no, it's not another day closer to the pitchers and catchers report. Some of you may know, some of you may not. It is going to be the Lunar or Chinese New Year coming up this Wednesday. The year of the snake is beginning, and we have an interesting historical precedent when it comes to the year of the snake. And joining me to talk about it, I have Phuong, a fellow D-backs fan here in London.
Did you know that the D-backs historically do well in the year of the snake?
So today we're using that little bit of trivia, or call it an omen of prediction, if you like, to see what 2025 has in store for the D-backs.
Between 2000 and 2025, there have been 2 years of the snake, the last being in 2013.
And 2013, where the D-backs romped to, second in the division. Paul Goldschmidt, man, what a year he had. 6.3 WAR, All-Star, second in MVP voting. He was a Golden Glove at first base and a Silver Slugger award. But, that doesn't even top how good of a year the year of the snake has been in past for the Diamondbacks because, of course,
2001, and we all know how that went.
But does the connection go deeper than we think? There's plenty of similarities to look at between 2001 and how 2025 is looking for the Diamondbacks. So to kick off the year, let's dive right into it. At the start, in 2001, the D-backs had a wildly impressive 1-2 rotation, very widely touted as the best 1-2 rotation and starting pitching in the league, and that was Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling.
We now have Corbin Burnes and Zac Gallen.
And I'd put those guys up against any other pitching duo of Cy Young candidates in an instant. I mean, you got obviously Corbin Burnes with that signature kind of cutter fastball, and then Zac Gallen has been our ace for years now, ever since that Jazz Chisholm Zac Gallen trade to Miami. I think if you put those guys up against any other potential duo of Cy Young candidates in the league, where you think about teams that have one or two amazing starting pitchers, and then the rest of the rotation, like we're not going to talk about the Dodgers. They have Ohtani, they have Kershaw, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki. It's ridiculous. We're not going to talk about the Dodgers starting rotation, but if we compare Corbin Burnes, Zac Gallen to somebody like Sale and Strider at the Braves, or everything else the LA has, beyond what a fully fit Gallen and Burnes can be, I'm pretty sure that we've got the strongest 1-2 rotation when it comes to starting pitching in the league, and that's a big parallel to the duo that fired us to victory in the 2001 World Series. Both Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling are Hall of Famers. As much as I might disagree with what Curt Schilling has to say off the field, and Randy Johnson's off doing his photography bit, in 2001 those were the guys in Major League Baseball. So when you start looking at the styles, I think, of pitching, it's a little bit different. Like, neither Corbin Burnes nor Zac Gallen are like the overwhelming, impressive fastball velocity, interesting motion like what Randy Johnson had. Curt Schilling, Corbin Burnes is an interesting comparison. They're similar builds of guy. They both throw hard, and they also have some good breaking stuff. Zac Gallen and the Randy Johnson comparison, I think the similarities end at the long hair. So we'll leave it there. But still, Cy Young winners, both of them. So maybe not as dissimilar as you might think.
And on the rest of the roster side, we have a lot of parallels that we can draw between 2001 and 2025.
So the 2001 D-backs had 4 injuries in the previous 2 years. Like, had really had to fight off big injury crises in sort of the years following their formation. But the latter half of 2000 going into 2021 is when things really started to pick up, and they'd still given a strong showing of themselves. It's similar to how last year's Diamondbacks had the best offense in all of baseball, yet you couldn't quite close out games as needed. Many teams in the league during this offseason and during the offseason between 2000 and 2001 were searching for an elite closer, but the Diamondbacks, of course, weren't as desperate.
And the 2001 D-backs had 90% of one in Byung-Hyun Kim.
And he was unique in so many ways. So what's to say that when it comes to sidewinding pitching in the desert, for want of a better snake pun in the year of the snake, who's to say we won't see a breakout season from another sidewinder in Ryan Thompson this year? We can also see some similarities, in the infield as well between 2001 and 2025 rosters. I mean, there's an NLCS MVP candidate at second base, Craig Counsell, of course, in 2001, and then Ketel Marte, respectively, for the 2025 D-backs. Most people have Ketel as the number one MVP candidate for second baseman this year. Coming up for Ketel, this is pretty much undisputed in major league forums, channels, and stuff. And if he stays fit, he could be an all-star dark horse, perhaps if he hadn't got injured in 2024, beyond some ridiculous seasons for Lindor and Ohtani. Ketel Marte was third in MVP voting. He got that, obviously, that really crap ankle injury. But, he was getting shouts. So I think if he stays fit this year, that could be something pretty significant. And similar to, in 2001, flying under the radar, Craig Counsell, he was a great addition to that Diamondbacks team. Luis Gonzalez and Randy Sanders slugging stardom kind of claimed a lot of the headlines. Like that was a suspiciously powerful year for Gonzo when you look at his career trajectories. But flying under the radar, Ketel Marte is pretty good at that. He's been underneath a lot of these guys like Ohtani in the headlines in 2024, but maybe he's going to see some more DH reps this year if the rumors are to be believed. And a Ketel Marte bat with more power, like I say more power, even more power, would truly be a sight to behold.
However, there is one big difference. The 2001 team didn't have a Rookie of the Year contender.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Probably the closest, from memory, the closest that 2001 team had when it comes to Rookie of the Year contenders was infielder Junior Spivey, who he hit .250 in 72 games, ending the year with only a slightly positive WAR at 0.4. But, they were an all-star and part of the MVP vote in the following year. So it's not, not to be super unrealistic, but the 2025 Diamondbacks are blessed with a top 3 Rookie of the Year candidate. That's the big difference here. Jordan Lawler is far from an unknown quantity, having made 14 appearances for the D-backs in 2023. He pinch run and hit a lowly 129, which it's not great numbers, but the guy barely got plate appearances, so it's not unfair of us to say that Jordan Lawler isn't going to go out there and be an MVP candidate this year based on those numbers alone. He's a guy who we're expecting to see so much more from because we have barely seen anything from him. 2024 was expected to sort of be their breakout Rookie of the Year candidacy year, but injuries has limited them to only 85 at-bats in the minor leagues. But they've been making up for that. They played winter ball in the Dominican Republic this year, and they have absolutely raked over there during this offseason. So they could play at second, they could play at shortstop, they could play at third base, depending on what happens with the Diamondbacks infield. There's going to be a lot of competition in that infield. And, if that pesky right thumb ligament stays intact, the number 9 MLB prospect might look to carry some big numbers onto the Diamondbacks majors roster. Like, he's not even guaranteed a spot, but I think a lot of people are expecting him to be there come spring training, come opening day. During the offseason, they've recorded 409, 481, 773 in their first 27 plate appearances in Lidom. And, you know, they've shown their readiness to be a major leaguer already. You know, they have made their major league debut. And, you know, perhaps they're going to see some reps at second if, you know, the rumors are followed through with some Ketel Marte at DH days.
And let's not forget the last time we saw Lola in a D-backs jersey was a successful NLCS. Maybe history will repeat itself again in 2025.
So those are some pretty positive omens. But of course, this is all, you know, historical comparison. I think if we take off the tinfoil hats for a second, you can always think about, you know, let's join the dots and let's call something a UFO when in fact it's just a bit of dust on the lens or something like that, or glimmering light in the night sky. It's just something flying into Sky Harbor. But beyond history, let's look towards the future, of course. The Year of the Snake, 2025, comes with a lot of little omens, little predictions that you can look at when it comes to, you know, Asian tradition and the zodiac. And lots of other things are lucky as well. So, Phuong, why don't you tell us a little bit about, you know, what the zodiac says is going to be lucky in 2025?
Well, as you say, we have some pretty major omens, that being some lucky numbers, which are 2 and 9. We also have some lucky colors, which are red and black this year.
So you paying attention, Diamondbacks fans? Your lucky numbers for this year are 2 and 9. And those of you who've, you know, started manically joining the dots like I have already will have connected that already to 2 major league shortstops on the Diamondbacks roster, and that's number 2, Geraldo Perdomo, who many people, after he's renewed his deal with the Diamondbacks and we've avoided arbitration, are calling for him to get, you know, captaincy shouts. And, you know, I'm a big fan of Geraldo Perdomo. I think that's pretty well documented at this point. Geraldo Perdomo as the D-backs captain on the roster going into this year would be pretty cool. Obviously not got, you know, major pop in his bat, but he has good at bats. He walks a lot. As absolute bunt machine. When he gets the ball down in front of him, he's very effective. Got decent speed around the bases. He's not lightning fast, but he's decent around the bases. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good year for Geraldo Perdomo, according to the Zodiac. But then, of course, there's another major league shortstop whose number we've just mentioned. Of course, number 9 is Blaze Alexander, who's somebody who sort of a bit of an unknown going into this year. He was a guy who came in and we thought, you know, if Perdomo wasn't going to play at shortstop, would it be Jordan Lawler who would be the guy there? But no, Blaze Alexander came in and had a solid stint there. It's not a super productive bat, but he had a surprising amount of power for his frame when we saw him in a Diamondbacks jersey this year. So yeah, maybe a good competitive year for Blaze Alexander. There's been talk of, you know, one of these Diamondbacks shortstops being moved into the outfield. I think some people are probably expecting that to be Lawler over Alexander, just based on, you know, the strength of their arm playing defensively. But, you know, if Blaze Alexander is needed, I think we're all confident that he can step up. And any of these guys, Lawler, Perdomo, Alexander, you know, the likes of, you know, Tommy Troy, you've got also Tim Tower as well. All of these utility man infielders are going to be floating around the start of the roster this year. Where are they going to play? What's going to be useful for them? Of course, we've got Kessinger, who's of course come in from the Astros as well, who was a bit of an unknown quantity as far as Diamondbacks fans are concerned, because I don't know about you, but I don't watch a huge amount of Houston Astros games. So insane competition for those infielder spots. Maybe the Zodiac's giving us a little bit of a hint there as to who might actually emerge on top out of that little battle for the shortstop spot. It's 2 and 9, Perdomo and Alexander. And then, of course, as Phuong just said, lucky colors, so red and black. That's right? Yeah. So, Diamondbacks fans, you know what jersey that is. It's the alternate rotation jersey. Something that historically we've not had a huge amount of success in. You know, it's one of the jerseys where we've been pummeled a little bit more in 2023, but obviously Nike are bringing back the authentic stitching as much as possible to avoid the controversies following Fanatics this year. So maybe that'll represent a change of fortunes in how we do in that black and red jersey as well. And, you know, good fortune's going to be some pretty good stuff. But it's not just down to things like lucky numbers and colors that, you know, you might have heard of in Asian tradition as well. There's some more uncommon lucky things as well. Maybe a bit less well known, a bit more niche. Why don't you tell us a bit more about what we're expecting to see from that front?
Yeah, so we have a few more minor omens, one of which is the lucky flower of this year, which is the cacti, which I'm sure you've seen plenty of around the southwest, which is also our lucky direction for this year.
So lucky direction southwest. I think that's unsurprising if you're a fan of baseball and you've been following the news. Of course, southwest means the Diamondbacks. Means the Padres, means the Giants, but yeah, probably also means the Dodgers. But I'm going to go ahead and exclusively interpret that as being solely good for the Diamondbacks. Padres obviously been in a little bit of mud this offseason trying to make some signings over at the Giants. Yeah, their big name this year has got Justin Verlander written all over it, and Pavin Smith is absolutely rubbing his hands together and licking his lips at the chance of facing Justin Verlander again. So maybe it won't be a great year for the Giants. And I got to say, sorry for making that prediction, Harry, over at Home Run Travel and Tours. I know you're a big Giants guy, but maybe not going to be a great year for the Giants. And of course, the Dodgers are going to absolutely piss the division this year if the amount they're spending is anything to go by. But I think that second spot is the Diamondbacks to lose. Look at how strong their rotations and their trades have been during this off season. So yeah, Diamondbacks gonna go after the division and follow those lucky cacti, and we'll see how it goes. I don't think there's anything specific about the type of cacti, but I think we can probably call that a win for the Swarrows. Scottsdale Swarrows, shout out, my favorite Arizona Fall League team. Love that hat. Still get weird looks and comments about it wearing it around London, but I don't care. But of course, there's plenty of little details that could point to a big and successful year for the D-backs this year. And we've got the money to back it. We've got Ken Kendrick as an owner. He's putting the money in. His comments clearly point to one of commitment. There's talks of redevelopment and expansion of different bits of Chase Field to sort of maximize that revenue, to keep the Diamondbacks a sustainable baseball organization. I think I saw some stats this week that the Diamondbacks are, I think, third in terms of the percentage of their revenue or their net revenue that gets reinvested back into the team's payroll, and that's always encouraging to see. We're committed to paying our way through the division in a sustainable way, but one that's still competitive, as opposed to the gap between the two biggest spenders this offseason. The gap between, I think, the Dodgers and the Phillies now is about 70 million, and I saw something that was like that's 70 million is more than the bottom four teams' total payroll in all of MLB. So Diamondbacks aren't going down that route to sort of just what over here in the UK we'd call Manchester Citying your way to victory, or Paris Saint-Germaining your way to victory, and depending on your football affiliations, or soccer, as my friends across the pond would call it. Diamondbacks aren't doing that. Diamondbacks instead are relying on what makes the Diamondbacks good, which is good, passionate fans, solid baseball, executing things as best as you can do it, rather than deciding that you require a Juan Soto or an Aaron Judge to do it. Who needs those guys? We got Corbin Carroll, we got Ketel Marte, we got Gabby Moreno. We didn't get Christian Walker back, we didn't get Paul Goldschmidt back, but we went and got Josh Naylor. What's not to like about that move? He's a guy who he will wear his heart on his sleeve, and maybe that'll go on top of the Diamondbacks AVNet sleeve sponsor patch. Josh Naylor will wear his heart on his sleeves. If teams aren't afraid of him, they probably will be once he gets out there. If Diamondbacks players in the dugout and on the bench aren't doing their best, he is going to let them know. What's not to like about this Diamondbacks roster? I think we're still due a couple of arrivals as the offseason drags on, maybe ahead of the pitchers and catchers report. We've been bringing in free agent catchers from left, right, and center, but the likes of Jose Herrera, he's only here because Zac Gallen likes pitching to him. But you've got plenty of other guys waiting to step up. What's on the cards for Gabby Moreno? He's probably going to be our number one starting catcher. So what does that leave you for Adrian Del Castillo? Is ADC going to be the DH this year? We all know he's got that proper pop in his bat. So it's sounding good. And, thanks to Phuong for coming on and telling us all about these good omens that the Diamondbacks are receiving. And the year of the snake looks like it might be that in more than just name. With that, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening. We're going to wrap the episode up there, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.